Welcome to the Vet S.O.S podcast. Remember, don't try to see a transition. Grab the Vet S.O.S Lifeline. Vet S.O.S is brought to you by the Who Know Network, and we're proud members of the Parade Deck community. Today, we're sitting down with Matt, founder of Operation Headshot. They so many different things and are doing great things for our community. Definitely looking forward to learning more about what they got going on. Riding shotgun again. Keith, how you doing today, brother?
Living the dream as always. Good, sir. How you doing?
Man, I'm glad it's March. Not only because I'm Irish, and it's all about St. Patrick's Day, but February was crazy, man. It felt like I was chasing every day.
Yeah,
just absolutely ridiculous. So
yeah.
All right. Well, let's jump right into this. We got Matt Watkins, true Nashville, Tennessee native, has 17 years of continued service in the Marine Corps, which has shaped his understanding of perseverance, leadership, and adaptability. In 2021, he transitioned to the reserves and launched Operation Headshot, a nonprofit focused on helping veterans and military spouses build a brand, expand their network, and thrive beyond the military. Through his work, he aims to lower unemployment, ease financial burdens, and strengthen the well-being of military families. That is awesome, Matt. How are you doing today?
Doing pretty good. Can't complain. And I think even if I did complain, no one would listen. So
we just mute you. Right. So are you still in the reserves now?
I am. It's I switched over from active duty like you had mentioned back in 2021, and it's a whole different world.
I bet. So can you tell us a little bit about the transition process going from active to reserve?
Yeah. I want to kind of back up a little bit, if that's okay, to kind of just to get the full story, right? So, because after 14 years of service, to transition over to the reserves or get out is kind of, I used to think it wasn't normal, but I've since found out that's honestly when a lot of folks have transitioned. But I didn't get out because of a bad experience. I had a great career on active duty. Yeah, I mean, it was mainly because in 2018 I deployed with a 2-year-old and 2-month-old. And I just came off of recruiting duty about 8 months prior to that deployment kicking off, and my wife and I had been talking about what 20 years would look like and what beyond 20 years would look like on active duty. But honestly, being gone and watching how honest, it was really obviously my 2-year-old, my 2-month-old had no clue what was going on in the world anyway. But I watched how my 2-year-old reacted to that deployment, and even in phone calls afterwards or during the deployment. And I knew then that I had to change priorities. Because it wasn't going to be good for him. But now looking back at it, and him being 8 years old now, and he doesn't remember any of it, I kind of like, you little turd, like you better remember some of this, because I changed my whole life for you. But no, it was hindsight's 2020, right? But it was the best decision for me. It was the best decision for my family and for my kids. But so in 2021, I transitioned through the DoD Skill Bridge program. And for those who are unfamiliar, the DoD Skill Bridge program allows the service member up to 6 months of an internship while still being paid on active duty, still getting all their benefits and all that good stuff. I had a 4-month internship. I think times have changed since I went through it, but I found a company that was not a DoD Skill Bridge partner. It was a small executive search firm in Nashville. I thought I knew what that meant. And then they brought me in. So I talked to the hiring manager. He said, "Hey, the CEO, it's a 25-person company. The CEO wants to speak to you." And I said, "Sure." And we were talking, and he said, "Hey, what do you want to make for a salary?" And I said, "Well, I had 14 years active duty. I was in E6 in San Diego, so comparable to that for the Nashville-based salary, Nashville, Tennessee." And I said, somewhere around 90,000. And he kind of looked at me, and he was like, "Okay, shouldn't be a problem." So I thought, okay, shouldn't be a problem. So I continued to worked my ass off for 4 months, going in office to a remote job that no one was in a 3,500 square foot office, doing work that wasn't assigned to me just so I could prove myself so I could get a job. And it came time for the offer letter, and the hiring manager, in his office, and I walked in there, and he said, Matt, we want to offer you a position. You've been doing great work. And he hands me the offer letter. This is the first time I've ever seen an offer letter because I spent my whole adult life in the Marine Corps. So I'm reading it as hard as that can be for Marines. But I get to the bottom. It wasn't written in crayon, guys. If it would have been in red crayon, I would have had it. But no, I got to the bottom and it said $48,000 for a salary, and my stomach sank. And I was like, I'm not going to be able to pay my bills. Like, I might be able to pay my bills, but we're not going to eat. Or one of these things is going to happen. And then I was like, I just bought a new truck, because in my head I was making 90 grand, right, coming out. I was going to have to make a few adjustments, but it was going to be okay. I was like, man, I'm going to have to sell my truck. I'm going to have to do all this stuff. And he just looked at me and he said, obviously, he said, Matt, something's wrong, isn't it? And I said, yes. Really wrong. And we talked about the salary, and he said, there's just no way we can get to 90. No executive search recruiter makes $90,000 a year as a base salary. Maybe with like commission or bonus, maybe some things like that, but as a base salary, he said it just doesn't work like that. So either way, that really was a huge learning curve for me. He understood that there was no communication between himself and the CEO. And as much as I wanted to burn a bridge, when I later left that company, I ended up accepting an offer for about $58,000 because I had no other option. I didn't prepare. I didn't prepare for worst case scenario, which I definitely try to now. Right. So I ended up leaving that company about 3 weeks later, and fast forward about a year, and I'm sitting in an interview with a company called Premise Health, who I work for now. And, as the military program manager. So I have a very unique job. It's a really good position, but I'm sitting there with the CEO of a 6,500 person company that's around a revenue of about $4 billion a year. And we're nationwide. We're across 45 states and Guam, and the CHRO. So to me, number one, sitting in that interview with those two individuals showed the care that they have for veterans and the support that they have for veterans. And they want to bring the right person in the seat. But at the end, they asked me if I had any questions. And I was like, yeah, you guys haven't asked for any references whatsoever. Like, I want to make sure I get this job. It's really important to me. It has a purpose. But you guys haven't asked for any references. And they said, Matt, we already know everything about you. I was like, what? How do you know everything about me? And they said, well, your hiring manager at Bufkin Baker, which was the executive search firm. They said your hiring manager was his name is Mark, and I won't say his last name, but his name is Mark, and his wife is Shannon, who is our CFO. I was like, oh, well, I'm glad I didn't burn any bridges then. That was the employment side of the transition. I will say that first 18 months I didn't know what it was at the time, but they call it depression. It was probably the worst 18 months of my life. And I won't say it started off by that job, right? I was very fortunate to always be employed and never be unemployed and bringing money to the table. But I tell people that about that six to 8 month mark, it really hit me. And the best way I know how to explain it is if you can put yourself in a pitch black space to where you can't see anything in front of you, to include your hands, you can run in any direction. You never feel like you get anywhere. You see zero light. You can yell, you can scream. Nobody hears you. You can't even hear yourself. That's where I was. And
that's not normal.
Right.
I'm in that right now.
That's a typical Tuesday night.
Yeah, right? Like when the doctor asks you how much pain are you in? How much is normal? No,
yeah, right.
What?
But yeah, that's where I was, and that's the sad part, right? Is that is normal for many transitioning service members. I didn't know that was depression. I didn't know that I was not supposed to feel that way because I had my family around me. That's great. To include my not immediate family, since I'm back in my hometown, and I also had a pretty good support system around me. But that was where I was, and that's also when the birth of Operation Headshot happened. So it was either a nonprofit, a coffee company, or a t-shirt company. I figured veterans do one of those three things, and now I understand that podcast is another one. No offense.
Wow, I feel like we just got a cheap shot from an Alabama fan, nonetheless.
You know, I bought this mic and some other equipment. I have some soundproofing behind me because I was gonna start one, and then I was like, I don't have time. So I applaud you guys. Like, you guys are doing great stuff. So it wasn't a cheap shot. It was more so like veterans do one of 3 or 4 things, and I decided to pick the one that there's 50 something thousand other of them to do. So
this is true. Well, yeah, fantastic story, man. I mean, and I love the way you captured, the depression piece. I know we joked about it, but it's serious, right? And I think, all 3 of us can probably relate to it in one degree or another, as you went through the transition or what have you, and it is serious. And I applaud you for identifying that and being able to pull yourself out of that, because that's huge. And ironically, you are right. It seems like it's either a podcast, a nonprofit, a coffee store, or a t-shirt store, and we went the podcast route, and now we're turning the podcast into a nonprofit. So maybe we just need to start selling coffee and t-shirts too. And we'll just try to corner the market.
We joke about that, but I think because of the things that we lose as veterans, such as community, identity, and a sense of purpose, those things make sense. Maybe not the t-shirt company, but coffee typically brings people together. When you have a meeting with somebody, you're like, hey, let's go grab coffee. Podcasts, I mean, you guys are building you have built a huge community, right? And it provides you a sense of purpose because people are allowed to tell their stories and be heard. And then a nonprofit, it should have a good mission with that provides a sense of purpose. And just so happens ours provides a sense of purpose. It provided me a new identity from what we do. And it provided a community. So yeah.
And I like how you stopped yourself a little bit there, though.
Well, it's funny you mentioned the coffee thing, bringing people together, and that immediately brought to mind. I'm like, you know what? I'm also seeing a lot of veteran-owned breweries are popping up, because what does that do? That brings people together. So yeah, no, it's the same exact concept. No, that's awesome. And so, tell us a little bit about Operation Headshot. Like, so what are you doing? Like, what sort of services does it provide to our community?
Yeah. So as I had stated, it was due to the just weird depression that started it. So my wife and I were sitting around the dinner table, and she said, she obviously recognized everything. And she said, what can we do to keep other veterans from going through the same thing? And I'm sitting there, I'm like, well, if I knew that, I wouldn't be in this position. But I said, I have no idea. Right. I had to think before I spoke. So I wasn't in the doghouse later, but I said, I have no idea. And she said, well, I've gotten into photography. I'm pretty decent at taking photos. What if we provided them a headshot? She said it would help them with like kind of their transition. It'll help them with finding employment, and it could help them with, getting on the right steps to finding out who they are as a person outside of the military. And from there, it just kind of clicked, and my wheels started spinning. But I was like, how are we going to get everybody together? And she said, well, I don't know. And I was in the recruiting world at the time. I was in between the SkillBridge job and the job I have now. And I said, well, what if we host a networking event? I just heard, I'm in the recruiting world. I heard about networking. Obviously the military doesn't do it at all. And we could use headshots as an incentive for folks to show up. Like we could just, hey, folks from Fort Campbell, Kentucky can come, veterans in the local area. We can try to get some of the hiring managers that I've built relationships with to come together and just kind of start building that community. So that's what we did. We held our first one on a Saturday, which I learned you don't do. It was in the middle of the day, and we had a company called Mission Barbecue. If you haven't heard of Mission Barbecue, they're phenomenal.
They're great.
They donated food, but that's another thing. You don't have heavy food like that at a networking event, especially when you're in a suit, right? But either way, it was a really good event. We had 20, 30 people showing up for that odd hour, the odd time of day, just everything. It was really good. We had no intentions of starting a nonprofit, but we quickly realized that if we wanted this to grow and actually have the reach that we knew it could have, the nonprofit route was really the only way, especially to keep things at no cost to veterans and military spouses. So we have since extended that reach to military spouses, which is something that is a passion project of mine, not my wife's. It actually, she had mentioned it, but she did not make it a main idea. But I realized how important that was last year after our first fundraiser. We were on our way home, and my wife accidentally told me that she was going through the same exact thing that I went through, as far as that transition is concerned. So backstory on my wife, very quickly, we started dating. She was 16. I was 18. 3 months later, I went to boot camp, and she's been with me ever since. You guys met her out at Mick, but we've been together for 17 years. I mean, her whole adult life has been Marine Corps, and she's known nothing different. So I would be remiss if I just wasn't providing the same amount of support to military spouses. So, excuse me. Currently, we actually just held our first 2025 networking event 2 nights ago on Thursday, and we had about 35, 40 show up. We had to do a date change because it was weather 2 weeks ago, so it kind of screwed up with our participants. But either way, currently we still host networking events. We try to do 4 a year, where we provide the at no cost headshots. We just don't have the time or resources to provide them outside of those events right now. However, we expanded our services, and we also provide a photography masterclass. So it's everything from learning what type of camera you need for whatever type of photography you want to get into, to editing, posing, composing, lighting, building a business, the type of software you need, the type of computer you might need to do the editing stuff on, the importance of SEO. I mean, you name it. It's literally a start to finish, or a start to, standing up a business masterclass. It's a $2,500 valued class that we offer at no cost to veterans and military spouses.
Wow.
Awesome. It's 6 months long, but that's because the classes are every 2 weeks. So we tried to spread them out, really just to make the workload a little less on ourselves and a little bit less on the students too. So they're about an hour to 2 hour long classes every 2 weeks. It's not that much of a workload. They're pre-recorded, and then we do a monthly meetup with all of our students. So last year we were very fortunate. We had 5 students, all disabled veterans. None of them were from Tennessee. They were literally from Boston all the way out to Salt Lake City. And all 5 graduated. And this year we don't have 5 students. We have 30 students.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So there's a big year that's cut out for us, and we got to figure out what type of culminating event we're going to have at the end of the year. Last year we were able to offer tickets to the Military Influencer Conference to our students, and we had one that was able to show up. The others weren't because of family, or the travel was just too much, or whatever the case. But one showed up, and he was able to build his portfolio in event photography. So you walked around. Very fortunate that Cortez with Mick allowed him to walk around with a camera and kind of build his portfolio so he could get into that industry. So yeah, it was that's what we're doing now. And then after that class, we provide the students with a year-long mentorship. whether it be starting a business or just photography in general, or just peer to peer. Like, hey, how's it going? Because not every student is going to start a business, right? The thing is, with that masterclass next year, we're doing things a little bit different. We're not going to have the full in-depth masterclass. It'll be a photography 101 that will be at no cost. And then all the other advanced courses will be, we haven't really narrowed it down yet on how we're going to do it, but it'll be a donation-based cost for those classes. Something very still easily affordable, like around 100 to 150 bucks, something like that. But we're splitting it up mainly because not everybody wants to start a business. Some folks just want it for the mental health side of things. Some folks just want it to make a little bit of a side money, but they don't want to run a full business. So they don't. That big masterclass is great, but we understand that it's not for everybody, so we're going to kind of break it up a little bit. And on top of that, that donation provides a little skin in the game and a little bit of incentive for them to continue to push forward with their business venture if that's what they want to do.
No, that's awesome. It's breaking into that field. Obviously, it's not easy to do, but then also just getting the training, like you said, valued at $2,500. I've seen some free classes. I know my wife and my son have attended some free classes, and on base and stuff like that. And they're very basic type things that are offered through Army Community Service or whatever. And great to learn how to do some things, but offering this master class and something they could potentially break into, and then. We have Michael Parks. He was out there at Mick, doing a lot of photos and stuff like that. Has been doing a ton of stuff in our community. He's been on the show as well. Does a lot with IVMF to help mentor students and stuff like that. So, a great tie-in probably with you to get help some of these people maybe as a mentor or whatever to really get their feet under them. So that's fantastic, man. I love hearing that.
So a lot of service members when they come out. So you mentioned earlier, right? Like they start a nonprofit, they do that. So for a service member who maybe is toying with one of the cliches that we seem to all go into, but something in the entrepreneurship realm, right? So like you're 14 years active duty and then switching, even the stuff you've since learned in the reserves, right? Like you weren't an entrepreneur in the Marine Corps. So like what in uniform did you, what skills did you take from your time in uniform that helped you start this organization and become an entrepreneur?
Yeah. So honestly, I attribute a lot of the success of Operation Headshot, as much as I hate to say it was recruiting duty. It was I can't even say it wasn't the best and worst. I mean, it was the worst duty that I think but it provided me with so much insight to effective leadership. Networking, because you have to network as a recruiter. Learning how to listen. So there's a saying in Marine Corps recruiting, I'm not sure if it carries on to every other branch, but listen with purpose. And that's something that has stuck with me. So it's listen with purpose, not listen with a purpose. It's listen with purpose. Essentially, it's active listening, right? But if you listen with a purpose, you already have this preconceived idea of what you want to hear, and you're already formulating your response based off of your assumption. Whereas if you're listening with purpose, your purpose is to hear what they have to say, process it, and then think about your response. So that's really helped me when it comes to talking with my team, with the board of directors, with veterans. Like, what does my audience need? It's not about what I want to give them. It's about what they need. I mean, though a lot of our experiences are the same when it comes to, depression, anxiety, and pain and all this other stuff, we don't all need the same things. My definition of success is going to be much different than your definition of success. I thought my definition of success was making $116,000, $120,000 a year, similar to what I was doing on active duty, and having a good progression to the top or the next rank or whatever. That's not my definition of success anymore. Don't get me wrong, the money would be nice, but if I have the ability to work from home when I want to have coffee with my wife when I wake up, have lunch with my kids. We homeschool our kids, so I can say have lunch with my kids in the middle of my workday. Take with my job, like we love to travel. If I can take my job with me and work for 6-8 hours a day and then go hang out at the beach in San Diego, then that's great, right? So it's that true work-life balance, and really being able to pour myself into my family first, and then the community that provided me such a great life for 14 years. So that's my sense of purpose, right? But yeah,
that's awesome. There were two things there that I pulled out of that. One, you said one of the most military things I've ever heard, and that is taking a 2-word active listening, and the Marine Corps turns it into 4 words.
Sounds about right. Thanks for pointing that out.
An absolute military example right there. It's like the side straddle hop. They're jumping jacks. What are we calling it the side straddle hop for? I never understood that one. That one baffled me my whole career. But then, the work-life balance, and, I'm one of those people that I hate that term. I don't agree with the term, because I think it's just life balance. Like you just need to, figure out how to balance your life. But I think, to me, it makes people chase something that really only you can control. You have to figure out what that balance is. And you've done that by finding your purpose and what, success means to you, which is another big thing. Just being able to define that, because, it's easy to chase a paycheck.
Yeah.
But are you happy? And money doesn't buy happiness necessarily. It provides opportunities, yes, but also can cause issues. So really like that, and love the stuff you're doing, man. Just fantastic. And I know we're getting close to the end. Is there anything else you guys have your hands in as far as an organization that you're trying to do for the community?
Oh man, that's loaded. We don't have time for that. I will say this, there's a lot of stuff working on the back end to help us expand our reach on the nonprofit side and on a potential for-profit side. I say that because this year we have 30 students, right? If I'm a nonprofit that's helping folks out and helping people succeed after service, that's my creative idea slogan, shooting for success after service. Nice. That's a lot of long drives into Nashville sitting in traffic. I'm an aviation mechanic by trade. I'm not that creative. But if I'm in a business of trying to help people define their success and then achieve it, I have to be able to put them somewhere after this course for employment. So, and it might as well be doing something that they love doing. So I'll leave it at that, because there's a lot on the back end that's working that I'm praying it works out. Not for myself, but so these folks that graduate our course, if they want a place to go, they have a place to go, and they can succeed monetarily and hopefully succeed in a way of doing something that they love to do.
Sounds like Operation Head Start coming to a military community near you.
Maybe it might be a few years, but we'll get there.
Love it.
Yeah. Well, Matt, we are unfortunately at time, and it's been great having you on the show. And I just want to interject, there's a bunch of big points we always try to bring to the transitioning community for service, and you hit on 2 of them without outright necessarily saying it. Networking, right? That the spouse of your former hiring manager from another company, like, it's a small world out there, right? You never know who in your network is going to come pop back up and come through in a big way for you. So networking. And then I always tell folks there's 5 things I love about a job. And we always get hung up around the money. There's 4 other things, and you hit every single one of them, right? Work-life balance, or just life balance, as Sean likes to say, right? Loving what you do, remote / on-site / whatever, the hours, being able to make your own hours, right? The culture, all these things, you hit on them. And service members, we lose, well, we don't, I wouldn't say lose sight of it, we don't have sight of it, right? We get so hung up around the dollar, and that's only one of the 5 things. And and I've been in jobs where I had 4 of the 5 things, and I was still miserable because I didn't have the one thing that was one of the most important to me, kind of. So anyway, I'm rambling, and we were at time, so I had to word bomb at that. But no, Matt, thank you so much for coming on. So one last question for you, for folks that are listening and tuning in, how can they get in touch with you, either if they want to maybe partake in your services, or even assist you in providing support for your services?
Yeah, for sure. So we do have a website. It's operationheadshot.com. Most nonprofits are .org. We're .com, operationheadshot.com. Also LinkedIn. I think it's scrolling across the screen. That's probably honestly the best way to get in touch with me specifically, unless you have my phone number. And then, as my wife likes to say, good luck at getting him to answer the phone. So, but yeah, LinkedIn, and then my email address is matt@operationheadshot.com. We are all voluntary, so I don't check my email every day. So yeah, those are the best ways.
Okay. Yeah, keep that work-life balance. That's what I'm talking about. So, all right. Well, again, Matt, it was awesome. Thank you so much for coming on the show. And on behalf of the entire Vet S.O.S family, we'd like to thank everyone for joining us today. Vet S.O.S is growing and expanding. All right. You can follow us on all of those social media platforms that you go to. Make sure to check out all 3 of our shows, and to follow and subscribe to us wherever you get your podcast from. We're on YouTube, Reach Across America Radio, The Parade Deck, and all your other favorite podcast platforms. And as always, remember, don't drown in the sea of transition. Grab the Vet S.O.S Lifeline.